I still remember the way the wind felt on my face that morning. Dry, sharp, uninvited. Like the truth I'd been trying to ignore for years was finally catching up, carried on a Montana breeze, and wrapped in silence. I was standing alone outside a gas station, my coffee still warm in one hand, my other hand hanging by my side, useless, like the keys in my pocket, house keys, not car keys, which I didn't realize until I heard the laughter fading into the distance. My wife Stephanie had just driven off, her sisters in the back seat, heads thrown back like it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. I didn't say anything at first, I just stood there. The way you do when something inside you snaps so quietly, you can't tell if it's relief or grief, she yelled. Figure it out yourself. Like it was some punchline to a joke I hadn't heard. And then she was gone. You think you know someone after 8 years? After thousands of dinners, birthday gifts, arguments over laundry and vacations and mortgage payments, after late-night laughter and quiet Sundays, you think that builds something unshakable, but it doesn't. It hides the cracks. And mine had just been laid bare in a parking lot 200 miles from home. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. Jessica's nothing. Vanessa. She had already blocked me after some argument last year I barely remembered. Probably about the way I offered to fix something she swore didn't need a man's help. I used to laugh it off. I don't anymore. The clerk inside said there were no buses from here, but I could maybe catch a Greyhound out of Billings 40 miles east, give or take. The kind of detail that hits differently when your marriage has just uncoiled itself into a cruel social experiment. I sat on the curb for a while. Didn't cry, didn't scream. I just watched the sun creep across the parking lot, and I thought about every time Stephanie had said, "It's just sister stuff," when she smiled over her shoulder at them, whispering jokes I never heard. It all made sense now, like a punchline with teeth. We were supposed to be heading back to Denver that morning. Wedding weekend for some cousin I didn't know. The kind of trip you agreed to without thinking, until you find yourself being laughed at through a car window, abandoned for a lesson you didn't ask to learn. I can't remember what made me stand up. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe the taste of diesel fumes. Maybe the idea that sitting still made me exactly what they thought I was. Predictable. Helpless. A joke. I called for a cab to Billings. $60 I didn't have. Worth every penny. I didn't feel angry. Not then. I felt something deeper. Something heavy and settled, like wet concrete around my ribs. There's a specific kind of pain that doesn't scream, it just stares. And that's what I did the entire ride. Stare out the window and think about the woman I married. Stephanie wasn't always like this. At least I don't think she was. She used to be warm, funny, the kind of woman who'd kiss me before I left for work and leave notes on the counter, but slowly, almost invisibly, that version of her faded, replaced by someone who flinched when I spoke too gently, like kindness was an insult. Someone who always had somewhere else to be, somewhere her sisters were waiting. That it started small, always does. Missed dinners, canceled plans, vacations rescheduled because Vanessa needed help moving or Jessica had a breakup. Family comes first, she'd say, and I believed her. I just didn't realize I was never counted as family. There were jokes too, casual, backhanded things. Remember when you used to be fun? They'd ask, smirking, before you got all domestic? And I'd laugh along, even though I was the one fixing their flats, checking their leases, driving them to airports. Support is invisible until it's gone. Then it becomes the story. I used to think being dependable meant being loved. I was wrong. I got to Billings with just enough time to make the last bus to Denver. 14 hours. No sleep. Just the soft hum of road beneath wheels and a growing ache behind my ribs. At some point, I think it was past midnight, somewhere outside Casper, I stopped seeing Stephanie as my wife. She was just a person now, a stranger who knew how to hurt me in the most efficient, quiet way possible. And the part that hurt the most wasn't the leaving, it was knowing she'd planned it. They all had the gas station stop, the weird smiles, the fake concern about my clinginess that wasn't a spontaneous moment of bad judgment. That was design, and I'd been the experiment. I don't remember falling asleep on that bus, just waking up to the light breaking across the Denver skyline. My hands were stiff, my phone was still silent. I expected something, a text, an apology, even a snide message about how I overreacted. But there was nothing, and that's when I knew this wasn't about a prank, this was about power, and they'd overplayed their hand. I stepped off the bus with one thought pulsing in the back of my mind. Slow, steady, like a drumbeat. They think I'll come crawling back. They have no idea who they left behind. I didn't go home. I couldn't, not because I was afraid. Though maybe I should have been, but because something in me had shifted. That house in Denver wasn't mine anymore. It was a stage, and I was done performing. Instead, I had the cab driver drop me off 2 blocks away from Kevin's apartment. My brother worked nights at a manufacturing plant in Colorado Springs. Always tired, always quiet, but steady. The kind of man who says little and sees everything. He had a spare room, and he never asked for explanations. Just handed me a beer and nodded once. "How long you staying?" he said. "I don't know yet." That was enough for him. I don't remember sleeping that first night. The walls were thin, the bed unfamiliar, The ceiling fan buzzed like a fly stuck in my skull, but it was the silence that got me. Not peaceful silence, the kind that follows something violent. The kind of silence that makes your own thoughts sound too loud. When I awoke, it was almost noon. My phone had 17 missed calls, 11 from Stephanie, 2 from unknown numbers, and 4 from Jessica's old work line, the one I used to fix when her screen cracked. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I showered, shaved, and stared at myself in the mirror until I started to look like a man again. At 1 p.m., I called my boss at North Peak Engineering and requested a transfer. We had an active hospital renovation project down in the Springs, short-staffed. I knew they needed hands. I told him I could start Wednesday. He didn't ask why. I didn't offer. That afternoon, I started sorting my life into 2 piles. The person I had been when I met Stephanie, and the one I'd have to become now that she was gone. The difference wasn't who I loved, it was who I trusted, and I didn't trust her anymore. She called again that evening. Her name lit up my screen like a warning label. I didn't answer, just watched the screen flash, then dim. Her voicemail came in moments later. I waited 5 minutes before playing it. "John, where are you? I came home and you're just gone. That's not like you. Call me back, please. We need to talk about this." No apology, no remorse, just confusion. Like I was the one who owed her an explanation. Like the gas station was some minor disagreement, not a coordinated abandonment designed to humiliate me. An hour later, Jessica tried calling, then Vanessa. I didn't answer them either. They'd already spoken. I could tell by how the pattern formed in that, not a coincidence. By Thursday, they'd moved on to using new numbers. Stephanie's work phone, blocked lines, private calls. Always the same message. I was overreacting. It was just a joke. I needed to come home so we could talk like adults, but I'd already talked like an adult for years. And every time I tried, they'd laughed behind my back. Kevin came home that night and told me Stephanie was parked across the street, just sitting in her sedan, watching the apartment like she was waiting for something. He looked tired, but, more than that, annoyed. "She sees you in the window. Man, you want me to tell her to leave?" "No," I said. "I'll handle it." I met her in the lobby before she could knock. She looked different. Not messy or broken, just tired. Like her performance was slipping. She reached for me like she hadn't left me in another state. "John, thank God, I've been so worried." I stepped back. Her hand dropped. "What do you want, Stephanie?" "I want us to go home." "I want to talk about what?" I asked. "How you stranded me 200 miles from home. How you and your sisters planned it for months." She flinched, just for a moment. Then I saw it, that flicker of irritation, of disbelief that I wasn't playing my part. "It was a prank, John," she said. "Like that made it better. You're acting like we committed a crime." "You did worse," I said. "You turned me into a joke. You laughed while I stood there wondering what I did to deserve it." "Because you needed it," she said. "No shame, no second guessing. You're so dependent, so clingy. We thought maybe if you had to figure something out on your own for once, you'd grow up a little." That was when I knew she still didn't understand what she'd done. She thought pain was a teaching tool, that cruelty was how you helped someone you loved. "I'm not coming home," I said. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't just walk out because your feelings got hurt. Watch me." I turned and walked back to the elevator. She followed me halfway, voice rising in pitch, not yelling, just fast-talking, desperate, trying to regain control. But I didn't look back. When the elevator doors closed, she was still talking. I slept like a stone that night. On Friday, I changed my number. By the 3rd week, I had found a 1-bedroom apartment on the south side of Colorado Springs. It wasn't much: thin carpet, a cracked balcony rail, walls painted too white, but it was mine. No shared decisions, no invisible rules. I painted the walls gray blue, bought a leather chair just because I liked how it looked. I cooked what I wanted, watched shows I actually cared about, and for the first time in almost a decade, I didn't feel like I was being observed. That's when the call came. Not from Stephanie, from my mother. "John, honey." Stephanie came by the house. I paused, sat down at the kitchen counter. "What did she say?" "She told us you're having a breakdown, that you disappeared after a family trip and won't answer her calls. I'm worried." "That's not like you." I could hear it, the shift. My mother liked Stephanie, always had. Thought she was good for me. But now Stephanie was telling my own family that I'd lost my mind. It wasn't enough to hurt me. She had to make it look like I hurt myself. I said I'd call my mom back later. Then I stared at the phone for a long time and realized she was still playing the game. She wasn't sorry. She was rewriting the story. I should have expected it. The narrative flipped. Stephanie always knew how to curate a version of reality that suited her. It was one of the things I admired at first. How she could walk into any room and shift the temperature with a smile. Back then, I thought it was confidence. Now I know it was control. She wasn't trying to find me when she went to my parents' house. She was trying to erase me, turn me into a ghost of her own making. A man who ran from responsibility, from commitment, from love. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my back, staring at the low ceiling of my new apartment, tracing the uneven plaster with my eyes. And I thought of all the moments I'd missed. All the signs I should have seen for what they were, not quirks, not just how sisters are. Warnings, there were the vacations I didn't really want to take, but did anyway. The ones where they booked the hotels without asking. Planned activities that didn't include me, laughed at jokes I wasn't in on. Stephanie always called it bonding, I called it exclusion, and I swallowed it down because I loved her. There was the birthday dinner she missed because Jessica's boyfriend broke up with her, the anniversary she forgot because Vanessa was moving again, the sudden weekend emergencies that always seemed to coincide with things I'd planned. And there were the looks, the ones exchanged across rooms, across dinner tables, through rearview mirrors, looks that said something I wasn't allowed to hear. Looking back now, it was never about a joke. It was about reinforcing something unspoken. I was the outsider. I was temporary. Stephanie told me once early in our relationship that her sisters were her compass. I didn't realize she meant that I was just a detour. I spent the weekend in Denver, not at our old house, but crashing with Marcus, a guy I'd worked with for years. He was there at our wedding. I remember that because he made a toast I never thanked him for. When he opened the door, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Heard you and Steph split up, he said. What happened? What did she tell you? He rubbed his jaw and exhaled. That you took off after some fight? Batchy's heartbroken. There it was, the new version of me, spreading like smoke. We sat on his back porch, and I told him the real story. Everything. The gas station, the blocked calls, the group chats I'd found on her laptop, full of laughing emojis and screenshots of private conversations I didn't know were being shared. The months of planning, the photos she'd taken of me while I slept. Dead to the world, she'd captioned one. Zero awareness. When I finished, Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You know what I remember from your wedding?" I shook my head. "You were talking to a few of the guys. Normal stuff. Laughing, relaxed. Every time you seemed like you were having fun without her, Stephanie would swoop in. Make up some reason you needed to go do something else." It hit me hard. Not because it was shocking, but because I'd forgotten. I used to think she was being a good hostess, making the rounds, keeping things moving. But maybe she just didn't like seeing me happy without her. That night, I drove past our old house. Her car was in the driveway. The lights were on inside. I could see her shadow moving through the kitchen. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. Just kept going. But seeing that house, that life from the outside made something shift inside me. A quiet click. I wasn't just running away from a bad marriage. I was running towards something better. On Monday morning, I opened a new bank account, transferred what was mine. Then I called a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Coleman, recommended by a friend of Kevin's. She specialized in divorce cases involving emotional abuse and reputational harm. I told her I didn't know where to start. She said, "Start by telling the truth." So I did. I told her about the abandonment, the blocked calls, the campaign to make me look unstable, the harassment from Stephanie's sisters, the way Stephanie had gone to my parents and told them I was having some kind of breakdown. Patricia didn't flinch. She took notes. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "I have screenshots, blocked numbers, some messages, the group chats, social media posts, 2 pictures from the weekend they left me. They were out drinking, celebrating." "Good," she said. "We can work with that." I signed the papers that afternoon. Before I left her office, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "One last thing. Don't engage. Don't respond to calls, texts, or any surprise visits. Anything you say can and will be used to paint you as unstable. Document everything. Let us handle the rest." It felt cold, legal, distant, but it was the first time in weeks I'd felt protected. I went back to my apartment that night and sat on the floor in the quiet. No TV, no music, just the soft hum of the fridge and the realization that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the man they wanted me to believe I was. They'd built a story around me, and I was going to tear it down piece by piece. I didn't tell anyone I'd filed, not yet. Not my parents, not even Kevin. I needed space between the decision and the consequences. Needed to feel it settle in my bones, like muscle memory. The quiet kind of strength that builds slowly after something breaks. Meanwhile, Stephanie kept trying. She started showing up in ways that didn't look like stalking on paper, but felt like it. I'd catch her car parked near my new apartment some nights. Once, I saw her in the parking lot of the job site in Colorado Springs. Engine running, just far enough away to feign coincidence. I didn't go to her. I didn't speak. I just let her watch me walk into work and disappear behind the steel frame of a building we were raising from the dust. And still, no apology. Only more messages. Now through new channels. She started emailing. "John, please. Let's not throw away everything we built." That word we did more damage than she probably intended. Because I was beginning to realize there had never really been a we. Just her version of us. And me, making adjustments to survive inside it. The lawyer Patricia kept me grounded. She worked fast, efficient, like a surgeon. Her updates came crisp and clear, and never too early in the morning, as if she understood that I was still relearning how to breathe. By the end of that first month, I'd stopped waking up with anxiety in my throat. Stopped checking my phone before my feet hit the floor. That might sound small, but when your trust has been hollowed out from the inside, even silence feels like a victory. Then the investigation began. Patricia had hired someone, a digital forensic specialist, to trace Stephanie's online activity and document the group chats. I had shown her the screenshots I found, but she wanted the full picture, raw evidence. She said it was about building a timeline, a story that couldn't be contradicted in court. What they found went deeper than I imagined. The chats between Stephanie and her sisters weren't just filled with snarky remarks or jokes. There were full-on planning threads, dated back months. Messages where they openly talked about how long it would take me to find my way home. Bets on how quickly I'd beg to be picked up. Jessica wrote things like, "He'll probably call his mommy within the hour." Vanessa responded, "Hope he gets a blister trying to hitchhike, lol." And Stephanie, she chimed in with her own versions of cruelty disguised as sarcasm. "You guys are awful, but yeah, it would be hilarious." Then there were photos taken during the weekend of my abandonment. Selfies at a bar in Billings, all three of them, holding up shot glasses, faces red from laughter, captions like "Girls' Weekend Vibes" and "Freedom Tastes Like Whiskey." In one picture, Jessica was wearing my Broncos cap, the one I'd left in the back seat before going inside the gas station. They weren't panicked about me being gone. They were celebrating it. Patricia printed everything, organized the material into folders and timelines, every text, every post, every thread. It was like watching the truth get weaponized in my favor, not for revenge, but for clarity. "We'll file this with the court," she said, "let their narrative crumble under its own weight." But what shook me the most wasn't the evidence itself. It was how normal it all looked. The cruelty was dressed up in emojis and laughter. No threats, no caps-locked rants. Just a cold kind of coordination. Like I wasn't a person, just a punchline in their private world. When I finally told Kevin, he just stared at the floor for a long time. Then he said, "Jesus, and I thought you were being dramatic." I nodded, "Yeah, so did I." The hearing was set for early March. But something in me refused to wait for the courtroom to feel justice. I wanted clarity now. Wanted to peel back every layer of what my marriage had been. So I started going through memories like a crime scene. Replaying conversations, revisiting holidays. And I saw it all with new eyes. The anniversary dinner Stephanie canceled at the last minute, supposedly for work. That night, she'd gone out with her sisters. I found a picture on Jessica's old Facebook page, posted by accident, and left. Public Stephanie smiling, wine glass in hand. The weekend we were supposed to paint the living room, she bailed to help Vanessa with her car. But I remembered that same weekend, Vanessa had posted a video, the three of them at a spa, laughing in white robes. I'd been erased long before that gas station. The abandonment didn't start with the engine revving and the tires peeling. It started with 1,000 small choices. They weren't just testing me, they were preparing to get rid of me. And now that I'd finally stepped out of the fog, I wasn't going to let them drag me back in. March came like a warning. Cold mornings, dust on the edge of the air. And that feeling, the one you get right before something breaks or blooms, where silence starts to buzz and every small sound carries weight. Patricia called me in on a Tuesday. Her tone was different, not sharp, not worried, just focused. Like a doctor calling you in to say the surgery was successful, but now we wait to see if the body accepts the healing. "Your wife hired a lawyer," she said, sliding a folder across the table. I expected that. What I didn't expect was the angle they were taking. "She's claiming abandonment," Patricia said. "Says you left the marriage suddenly, refused counseling, won't communicate." I sat back, feeling that familiar coldness in my stomach again. Not fear, not even surprise, just that slow, bitter twist of watching someone rewrite the story you lived. "They're saying you left to punish her," Patricia went on. "That your disappearance was intentional, emotional abuse in retaliation for what they're calling a minor family misunderstanding." I let out a short breath through my nose. I laughed, almost. "She left me on the side of the road." "I know," she said, "and I can prove it." Patricia opened a second folder, this one thicker, messier, tabs and highlights, color-coded into something close to warfare. "We had the investigator keep digging," she said. "Found more screenshots, more posts, more direct messages. Your wife has been telling people, friends, coworkers, that you became controlling, even abusive." That word sat heavy in the room. Neither of us moved for a few seconds. "That's a lie," I said. Finally, Patricia looked at me, calm as ever. "We know. And we can prove it's a lie." She laid out the evidence like a map. Screenshots of Stephanie bragging about teaching John a lesson. Captions on photos of that weekend. "No more emotional baggage. Cheers to freedom." Comments from friends underneath. Some surprised, some celebratory. None aware I was 200 miles away, alone, wondering what I'd done to deserve being erased. And then, the anchor. A group chat between Stephanie, Jessica, and Vanessa, one I hadn't seen before, where they joked about how I might cry in public or call his mom like a big baby. Vanessa had even made a bet on whether I'd file a missing persons report. Stephanie replied, "Nah, he's too proud. He'll just sulk and act wounded. He's always been dramatic." That broke something loose in me, not because it hurt. Not anymore, because it was the final piece. They weren't surprised I was gone. They were surprised I stayed gone. "They've tried to bury you," Patricia said, "but we have the shovel. and now we have the dirt. We filed our response that same day. The next morning, the calls started again. New numbers, blocked IDs, emails, even a voicemail from Jessica pretending to be concerned for my well-being. Stephanie's really upset, she said. You need to come home and fix this. Fix what? The script they'd written for me. The version of events where I was the unstable one. I didn't respond. I changed my number again. This time, I didn't tell anyone, but Kevin and Patricia. Stephanie showed up at Kevin's job the following week, told the receptionist. She was just dropping off lunch. Said she was worried about her husband. Kevin's boss called security. That became another entry in the log we were keeping. By then, I'd stopped reacting, stopped questioning if I was being cruel by cutting her off, because I knew what this was. Not reconciliation, not remorse, it was containment. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry. I didn't come back and let her fix the optics. I'd spent my evenings working on the business plan Patricia had helped me sketch out. A small contracting company, focused on honest work, fair quotes, no cutting corners. I called it Thompson Contracting. I built the logo myself, registered the LLC, designed a bare-bones website. Kevin helped with the name. Marcus offered to pass out flyers. It felt good. Not happy, not yet, but solid. Like I was finally pouring my energy into something that would give back instead of drain me dry. And then the hearing date arrived. I wore the same suit I got married in. Not out of sentiment, but because I wanted to walk into that courtroom and show her that the man she tried to destroy hadn't disappeared. He'd just changed zip codes. Stephanie was there already, sitting at the other table. Hair neat, face tired. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just wasn't seeing her through the old lens anymore. Her lawyer started first. He painted me as unstable, said I had a pattern of emotional withdrawal and a tendency to manipulate through silence, that I refused counseling, that I abandoned my marriage with no explanation, that Stephanie was blindsided. Patricia didn't flinch. When it was her turn, she stood calmly and handed the judge a stack of files, evidence, screenshots, social media posts, group chat transcripts, dates, timestamps, piece by piece. She dismantled the story Stephanie had tried to build. These are messages, Patricia said, between the petitioner and her sisters, joking about a premeditated abandonment of my client. Here are photos taken the same weekend, celebrating what they call a prank. Here is a record of repeated unwanted contact despite multiple requests for no communication. The judge flipped through each page slowly, his face unreadable. Patricia closed with quiet precision. This is not the story of an abandoned wife, she said. This is a pattern of emotional manipulation and reputational sabotage. My client isn't running away from a marriage. He's recovering from a campaign designed to humiliate and erase him. I didn't look at Stephanie as she shifted in her seat. I didn't need to. I could feel the beginning of the unraveling, and for the first time since that gas station, I didn't feel like the victim anymore. I felt like the witness, and the truth was finally being heard. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not just in temperature though it was, but in tone, detached, clinical, a space built not for healing, but for sorting. And yet, in that quiet, there was justice blooming, slow and measured, like spring thawing beneath snow. Stephanie didn't speak that day. Her lawyer did the talking, trying to steer things back toward sympathy. She regrets the way things unfolded, he said, as if it had all been one long, unfortunate accident. She never meant harm. It was poor judgment, not malice. But the evidence told a different story. You could feel it in the room. A shift, like everyone had walked in expecting a standard divorce, and suddenly realized they were standing at the scene of something much darker, subtle, sophisticated cruelty carried out under the mask of humor and family loyalty. The judge didn't deliver his decision that day. He said he wanted time to review the documentation more thoroughly. That left everything hanging. No clean ending. No final verdict. Just a space filled with breath and the weight of what had been said. I walked out first. Didn't look back. Outside, the wind was sharp again, just like that morning in Montana. I turned my face into it and breathed deep. No coffee in my hand this time. No gas station behind me. Just pavement and forward motion. That night, Kevin called. You know she showed up at Mom and Dad's again? He asked. I closed my eyes. What now? Same thing. Said you're being manipulated. That your new lawyer is turning you against her. That she's terrified for your mental state. The word didn't even sting anymore. She'd emptied it out so many times it had lost its power. She's desperate, I said quietly. Yeah, well, Mom told her to leave. Said she saw the screenshots that landed different. My mother had always been diplomatic. Always tried to keep peace. But now even she couldn't ignore the pattern. The next time Stephanie tried to reach me, it wasn't through email or phone, or family. It was a handwritten letter delivered to my apartment in an envelope with no return address. The handwriting was hers. I opened it, read it once. It was 5 pages long, rambling, emotional, not quite an apology, not really, just a tangle of contradictions. She said she missed me, that she didn't realize how far it had gone, that she was scared, that she never expected me to leave, that maybe her sisters had influenced her more than she realized. But right in the middle, buried like a seed, was the line that told me everything I needed to know. I never thought you'd actually stay gone. Not I never meant to hurt you. Not I'm sorry. Just disbelief that the game had ended before she'd declared it over, i.e., didn't respond. The letter went in the folder with the rest of the evidence. A week later, Jessica sent me a message on LinkedIn. Short, sharp, you're really gonna ruin her life over a joke. I didn't respond to her either, but I screenshotted it. Patricia added it to the file. By April, the judge called us back in. This time there was no speeches, just paperwork. Decisions? The verdict came quiet and clean. Dissolution of marriage? No. Spousal support awarded. Protective boundaries in place. Digital and physical. All assets reviewed and divided. Fairly based on documented contributions. But the most important part wasn't financial or legal, it was psychological, in the court's written summary. A single phrase stood out, a consistent pattern of emotionally destabilizing behavior by the petitioner, which undermines their credibility, and reveals intent inconsistent with their legal claims. Intent. That was the word that mattered. It meant they believed me. They saw the thread I'd been following since the gas station, the invisible leash that had wrapped around my chest and slowly tightened for years. Disguised as love, disguised as jokes, disguised as family. And now, it had snapped. After the ruling, Stephanie left without saying a word. No glance, no gesture. Just her and her lawyer slipping out into the hallway like shadows. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel revenge. I just felt done. Later that week, I walked through a small property on the edge of the Springs. A fixer-upper near the mountains, nothing fancy. A broken porch, cracked windows, but solid bones. I made an offer the same day. It felt right to build something again, but this time, brick by brick, on my own terms. No performance. No masks, just wood, sweat, silence, and peace. The house took months to get right. There were days I came home from work and just stood at the edge of the property, covered in sawdust and sweat, staring at the structure with a strange kind of reverence. It wasn't beautiful yet, but it was mine. Every nail, every corner patched, every wall stripped and repainted. It became a mirror for something inside me I hadn't known needed restoring. I left the old life behind without ceremony. There was no big announcement, no social media purge. I didn't ghost anyone, I just stopped participating. Slowly, the calls from mutual friends dried up, the invitations disappeared. The silence wasn't empty, it was earned. I took my time to dictate, didn't drink much, didn't distract. I sat in my own company and learned how to like it again. Some nights were hard, others felt like breathing for the first time in years. Healing isn't linear, it coils and twists, but you learn to walk with it. I started journaling, not for anyone else, just for me. Trying to understand how I'd gone so long, ignoring my own reflection, letting myself be laughed at, doubted, made small. That gas station wasn't the moment things changed. It was the moment I finally noticed how long I'd been gone from myself. One afternoon, I found that old Broncos cap in a box of things I'd packed up before leaving Denver. I held it for a long time, thought about burning it, but instead, I hung it on a hook by the door. Not as a keepsake, that as a reminder. You don't forget where you came from. You grow beyond it. I never heard from Stephanie again after the ruling. Maybe she finally accepted it, or maybe she simply moved on to another version of the story, where she wasn't the villain. That's the thing about people like her. They always find a new narrative to live inside, but me, I didn't need a narrative anymore. I just needed peace. And I found it in the little things, in the smell of fresh paint, in the sound of rain on the tin roof, in early morning drives through winding roads with no destination, in nights spent on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the dark roll in without fear of what tomorrow might bring. Sometimes I think about what I would say to her if I ever saw her again, but the truth is, I wouldn't say anything because nothing I could say would be louder than the life I've built in her absence. And that's the real justice, isn't it? Not in shouting, not in tearing someone down, but in rising so quietly they can't hear you coming, until the day they look up and realize you're not the one broken anymore, you're the one who got away.